Hi, I'm Dave Osborne, and welcome to South Texas Trails. When was the last time you sat down with a good book? Books can teach you about the past, prepare you for the future, or even take you to strange new worlds. They can be interesting, exciting, funny, and educational. But books don't just write themselves. It takes someone to sit down, think really hard, and work even harder to come up with all the right words and string them together in a way that can move you, inform you, or entertain you. We found 5 published authors in our South Texas Trails and asked them how they got the ideas for their books, the work involved in writing them, and any advice they'd have for future authors. Norma Christian is a prolific poet from Raymondville. Though she usually writes for herself and her own pleasure, something special happened when she sat down to make a poem for her grandsons. It's a story she called The Christmas Mouse.
The Christmas Mouse is a story, and it takes place, of course, on Christmas. And the little mouse, it's his first Christmas, so he runs into Santa Claus, and he learns quite a few lessons in the process. And I guess one of them that he learns is that you don't get something for nothing, and that it's also rewarding to give. So I think that's the 2 things that the poem brought out. It was, as I say, a story from start to finish, and it had a moral to it, which I don't think I set out to do that, but it turned out that way. I guess maybe it's in my basic philosophy.
Jerry Deal spent decades writing breaking headlines and in-depth investigations for newspapers across the country. In writing his first book, he went in an entirely different direction, creating a story about a girl and her dog, a Schnauzer, who saves lives and crosses hundreds of miles to be reunited with the family he loves. This is Famous Dog Chowski.
I have seen true stories where dogs have saved people's lives in fires, which is one part of this. That's where he allegedly got his famous part. He was Chowski, just Chowski before that. And then later, when he decided that he had to go back to his favorite mistress, Paula, who was a 7-year-old girl, he worked his way from Dallas to the Texas Hill Country. And we have always heard about experiences about dogs finding their way home. Right. And this would have been about a 200-mile trip.
Jim Warren is an archaeologist. While exploring the remains of Fort Merrill, he uncovered an archive of military reports detailing the day-to-day facts and figures concerning troops and supplies there. It was an unusual source of inspiration, but what he did with it was fascinating. These are the Fort Merrill letters.
Well, my name is Jim Warren. I'm a professional archaeologist, and I've been doing that for 40 years now. This is the first book that I wrote. It's called the Fort Merrill Letters, and like I say, it's a bunch of letters that this soldier wrote back to home. He lived up in Ohio, and he had joined the U.S. Army when we were fighting in Mexico back in the 1840s. And so this is right after the war there with Mexico in the 1850s. We call it historical fiction. All of the people that I mentioned in the book, the names and things like that, they were all real. And a lot of the action that they got into, like, with Indian fights and things like that, they were real. And I just embellished them a little bit and made them interesting to somebody. It was based on those reports that the Army sends in. Every month they send in a report telling what all happened at the fort. And I took those things that had happened at the fort, and I put these guys together and took them out and did it. They went all down in the valley, and they went over to the coast at Port Lavaca, and they got into all kinds of different scrapes.
After establishing an online historical website, Richard and Janice Hudson were hired to compile a photographic history of Live Oak County. They combed through tens of thousands of photographs and interviewed dozens of families, and in the end crafted a compelling chronicle of the county and its people. In the Image of America series, Live Oak County.
My name is Richard Hudson. My friends call me HUD. And I was born in Three Rivers, Texas. And I spent about the first 18 years of my life here. And then I moved away. And Janice and I, this is my wife, Janice, and I call her BJ sometimes. But I told her, I said, well, you know, in Three Rivers, Live Oak County, there's a lot of history down there. And I said, why don't we go down there and see if we can write a book or something about it, about what's down there. So we wrote this book on Live Oak County. And this book really, it's called Live Oak County. It's the Images of America. It's published by Arcadia Publishing. And so what we did is we came up with a book that had great photographs, and you know, we looked for the non-traditional photographs, and then we wrote some real tight stories. And most people who read this book really like the book, and they comment all the time about you know, how well it's written.
There's nothing more intimidating to a writer than staring at a blank page. That same blank page, though, can also be the most exciting thing, filled with endless possibilities. The question that authors get asked most is, where do you get your ideas?
There was a real Chowski, but he did not do anything that was in this book. And later I had another Schnauzer. I've just been real partial to Schnauzers. Chowski originally was my daughter's dog, and then when she got out of high school and went on, the dog stayed. So, and he lived almost 16 years. He was always a favorite of mine, and I thought, you know, a dog would be something that most people can relate to. And I got into this because a member of the family, granddaughter, was working with HEB in their project to get children to read more. Mm-hmm. And so I just got the idea, well, maybe if I can write something interesting enough that maybe that'll help get a few more kids to read. Actually, I've had some adults that have read it too.
I got interested when I was working out here at Fort Merrill, which is a military fort from the 1850s. And I had all of the monthly reports that the Army sends in to Washington. I got copies of them, and they gave us so much information, like, you know, how many men were there, how many animals they had, how many Indian raids and things like that happened, you know, that I got interested. And I thought, well, that would be interesting to people, you know, because when I write up a report on that job, I send it in to Austin, and it put it in a file. So anyway, I couldn't figure out how to write a book using all of that information and make it interesting to people. And finally, I decided that what I would do is make it one of the soldiers out there was writing home to his family and telling them what they were doing every day and how they operated and things like that. So the first book that I wrote, that's what I did, was write about that boy writing home.
They actually called us and asked us to write it because of our website. They saw the work that we did on our website. And which, by the way, our website is www.historyraven.com. And I put that together about 2 years ago, I guess. And it's had about a little over 80,000 hits on it. And so we've been fairly successful with that website. But anyway, Arcadia saw the website, and they asked us if we would write a book on Live Oak County. And so we did. We came down here. That's how we got started.
Well, I didn't actually write it as a book. I write poetry quite often. and it was one that was left on my computer. And well, I guess actually I was writing it for the grandsons to begin with, and it took some time. But anyway, it's just one of many poems. I didn't publish it the year that I wrote it. It was several years later that I decided to publish it. For one thing, I needed it illustrated, and I didn't know anyone who wanted to illustrate it. So when I finally wanted to, seriously, well, I went to high school and I talked to Allison Thompson, who is the art teacher there, and told her what I had in mind. So I gave her copies of the poem, and she distributed it to her better students. And those who were interested went ahead and did some drawings. And then she and I decided on our illustrator, who was Catherine Crow. And from there we went on to work about a year on illustrations and putting the poem together and getting it published.
I thought, I have a granddaughter who is considered as one of the top young artists in America, and I thought of her, but then I thought, she's so busy, you know, and everything. And then I thought of Luna. Well, Luna would be ideal, and she would be the type of person that would do the job that I really wanted. And actually, when she submitted these photos or these artwork, that she just did this just to give me the idea.
Right.
And I liked it so well. She says, yes, but I haven't finished it. I could do better. I don't want you to do better. This is great.
Often, when finishing a book, the author discovers that the story's not quite over. That's where Jerry Deal and Jim Warren found themselves.
I left this book at the end, doesn't end right. And so I wrote another book, and I got him out of the creek, and he got picked up by the Mexican army. And they took him into town in Matamoros, and they were going to shoot him because the colonel was gone, and this lieutenant said, you know, we're going to shoot this guy. He's a spy. But anyway, he got away, and he lived in Mexico a while. And everybody tells me that this first book was for the boys. The boys enjoy it. The men enjoy it. The second book is going to be for the ladies. The ladies are going to love it. And I hope they're right.
Well, I've already got a sequel in my mind. Chesky is going to be in Europe. He's going to become a world traveler through freakish occurrences. He gets put aboard a tramp steamer that goes from the port of Brownsville to I can't remember. I've already researched a port in France, and which incidentally, I have a friend who speaks fluent French, so that I'm going to utilize, well, it's actually Luna's mother, and to utilize her in some of the words and sentences, you know, and then show the English with this port is located about 100 miles from Paris, and that's where he's going to start his little French jaunt.
My poetry usually becomes a surprise to me when I get to the end, I guess you might say, because I don't really know where I've set out necessarily. And I can't remember whether I had the plot of this in mind when I wrote the poem or not. It's been several years ago, so I don't remember what I was thinking at the time.
Okay.
Richard and Janice Hudson's next book has a unique story behind it. The founder of Three Rivers, Mr. Charles Tipps, was alive and well for the 50th anniversary of the town founding.
A lady by the name of Viola Adloff, who was a local newspaper writer, and she'd written a couple of books, called Mr. Tipps and asked him if he would put his memoir of founding Three Rivers on paper, and he did. And he sent it to her, and she used portions of it in the
Golden Years.
Yeah, the golden years.
It was a brochure about
Yeah,
their 50
brochure,
years.
yeah.
Mhm.
And and then she loaned the manuscript out and never saw it again.
And one of the most exciting things was when we found the memoir for Mr. Tips, because everybody had told us about it, but nobody had it, nobody had read it. And Viola Adloff had written in one of her books that she could never remember who she loaned it to.
In the process of talking with families, we came across it. I looked it over. We found photographs that were taken in 1913 as the town was being built. Very good photographs. And I did some archival scanning on them. Anyway, we put some of the photographs with the story in, and we created this book. Now, we did change the title, because in this book, he said he was always impressed with the impresarios. And so when Tips was 19 years old, he graduated from the University of Texas with a BA. I think it was in accounting. Is that right?
I believe. Mhm.
And thinking that he would be a banker like his father, and ended up selling a little bit of real estate and made more money in selling the real estate than he made all years working for the bank. And so he decided to become a land developer. And since he was enamored with the old impresarios who colonized Texas, he decided that's what he wanted to do. He said even though Mexico didn't own Texas, he still wanted to do something like that. And so that's what he did. He went and he found this place at the confluence of the Nueces and the Frio and Atascosa rivers, and built this little town called Three Rivers. And he populated it. And once he was finished, he told his father-in-law, his father-in-law made the statement, well, he said, you were just like one of the last impresarios. It was in the book. So we retitled the book. We called it Memoir of the Last Impresario.
To wrap things up, we asked these authors for any advice they'd give to any up-and-coming writers.
Read, 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 read.
Don't do it, no. Because, no, I mean, if someone's really genuinely interested enough, they can make it. They can, it may take a lot of work and a lot of work in a lot of different ways to read other people's writings and experiment a little bit. If you're in school, I would say to write something and submit it to your English teacher and get an honest critique.
Right, you write, you start writing, and you read a lot. Read good literature. Even if you don't want to become a writer, if you want to be successful in whatever organization you're going to work in, whatever profession you're going to work in, the people that write well are the ones that move up, typically.
Well, actually, I wouldn't advise anybody to write poetry to make any money. People don't buy books for poetry. Since this was a children's book, it's sold as a children's book. And I think that is the selling, what sells the book. That plus the illustrations, were it not illustrated so well, I don't think it would sell. But I have considered compiling my poetry and putting it into a book, but if I do, it will be self-published, and I won't expect to make any money off of it. So I don't know whether I'd recommend anyone to try to publish poetry for any kind of monetary value. It would have to be more for their own satisfaction, I think.
I use my own experience about how I almost failed when I talk to these young people. I mean, sometimes it's frustrating to see how little they do know, but just say if you work at it, you can make it, and tell them, I almost didn't make it, and if I made it, you can make it.
We also had the privilege of taking a writer's camp one time where Larry McMurtry lives in Archer City. And what Larry McMurtry told us is that he gets up every morning about 5 o'clock and he spends 3 hours writing. And then he does his life. You know, he has life that goes on until that afternoon, pretty early in the afternoon, he starts and he reads for 5 hours every day with all the background that he has. And he is an absolute bibliophile. I mean, he has, and he tells you that, I mean, like we were in his living room now, that whole wall would be books. And he would tell you that he could take any book you wanted there. He knew every book that was there because anything he writes, he just reads everything he can get his hands on about it. So I think people fail to see that about writing. A lot of times they think they've got to bring just their experience to it. But you really need to have the experience of many, many other people, and it's a blend of what you know about it then and what you bring to it.
I guess one of the biggest things is you've got to have time to sit down and do it. You can't write 10 or 15 minutes and then go to the Dairy Queen, you know, fool around and come back home. You've got to sit down and think and think and think. And the first two or three times you think of what you're going to write, it's going to be wrong. So you've got to think of it again and change it. And the only other thing I can think of is just stay with it.
From the adventures of a little mouse on Christmas Eve to the founding of Three Rivers, these authors have taken us on journeys that sparked the imagination. They took simple ideas and with a lot of hard work turned them into something special. There's an old saying that everybody has a story to tell. What's your story? I hope to read it someday. I'm Dave Osborne. Until next time.